points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Raisha Sehgal.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, at least 40 Indian nationals have been killed and more than 50 injured in Kuwait after a fire engulfed a 6-story building housing dozens of laborers. Officials say that most of the deaths were due to smoke inhalation as the residents were asleep when the fire broke out. We will be bringing you the latest on that.
Right. Also on the show today, US President Joe Biden has arrived in Italy to attend the G7 summit. The summit is being attended by leaders of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is attending this meet as a special invitee, which will be his 5th G7 summit in a row. We'll get to all the details on the show, but first a quick check on the headlines.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Hamas has proposed numerous changes, some unworkable, to the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal. Hamas denies proposing new ideas.
A UN investigation accuses Israel of committing crimes against humanity during the Gaza war, including that of extermination. Probe also accuses Hamas of war crimes. Israel rejects findings of the UN probe.
Four Russian naval vessels, including a nuclear-powered submarine and a frigate, arrive in Cuba in a show of strength amid tensions with the West over the war in Ukraine.
A Russian ballistic missile strike on Ukraine's southern city of Kryvyi kills 9 and injures 29, including 5 children. The deadliest attack in weeks damaged an administrative building and also an apartment block.
India's Minister of State for External Affairs leaves for Kuwait on directions of Prime Minister Modi after at least 40 Indian workers die in a building fire.
US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi are likely to meet on the sidelines of G7 summit as India's Prime Minister travels to Italy on his first overseas trip after assuming office for a 3rd consecutive term.
One of the greatest basketball players of all time, Jerry West, has passed away at the age of 86. His silhouette inspired the iconic NBA logo.
And our top focus on World DNA. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Hamas has proposed various changes, some unworkable, to a U.S.-backed proposal for a ceasefire with Israel in Gaza.
Right, and he also added that mediators are determined to close the gaps.
We were waiting on one response, and that was the response from Hamas. And as the Prime Minister said, last night we received a response. Hamas has proposed numerous changes to the proposal that was on the table. We discussed those changes last night with Egyptian colleagues and today with the Prime Minister. Some of the changes are workable, some are not.
Meanwhile, senior Hamas official Osama Hamdan has denied that the group put forward new ideas. He asserted Hamas's stance that it was Israel that was rejecting proposals and accused the U.S. administration of going along with its close ally.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that many of Hamas's demands were minor and not unanticipated, while other demands differ more substantially from what was outlined in the UN Security Resolution.
Blinken also met Qatari Prime Minister in Doha. After the meet, Qatar's Prime Minister said that the behavior of both Israel and Hamas are being counterproductive to the efforts of ceasefire. He also assured that there is a clear and firm call to end the war in Gaza.
The negotiators from the U.S., Egypt and Qatar have been trying for months to mediate a ceasefire in the conflict and free the hostages. Hamas said that it is ready to accept an agreement leading to a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, as well as full withdrawal from the enclave, reconstruction and release of Palestinian prisoners.
Well, on the other side, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly said Israel will not commit to ending its campaign before Hamas is eliminated.
As diplomats seek a ceasefire deal which seems to be in a limbo, Israel is continuing its assaults in central and southern Gaza that are among the bloodiest of the war.
Israeli forces stepped up air and tank bombardments in Rafah in central Gaza. An Israeli airstrike on a house in Al-Nusayrat refugee camp killed 3 residents. Earlier, while Israeli forces pounded areas across Gaza as tanks advanced towards northern Rafah along the Egyptian border. Palestinian health officials said that 6 people were killed in an airstrike on Gaza City in the north, and 1 person was killed by a tank shell in Rafah.
On the other hand, deadly violence has intensified along Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Lebanon's Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah rained rockets on northern Israel, and this comes a day after an Israeli strike killed one of its senior commanders. According to Israeli military, 3 waves of around 150 rockets and missiles filled the sky over northern Israel. Hezbollah has also claimed more than 10 other attacks on Israeli military, including one with drones.
Well, a UN inquiry on Wednesday leveled allegations of war crimes against the IDF and Hamas.
Right. The findings, as drawn by the UN Commission of Inquiry from 2 parallel reports, conclude that Hamas, during the October 7th attack in Israel in its military retaliation, committed grave offenses against civilians, leading to immense loss of life. More details in our next report.
Both Israel and Hamas had committed war crimes in the early stages of the war in Gaza, a UN inquiry found on Wednesday. It also says Israel's actions constituted crimes against humanity because of the immense civilian losses. The findings were from 2 parallel reports published by the UN Commission of Inquiry, one focusing on the October 7th Hamas attacks and another on Israel's military response in Gaza. Israel did not cooperate with the commission, which it says has an anti-Israeli bias. Israel's diplomatic mission to the UN in Geneva rejected the findings. Hamas did not immediately respond to a request for comment. According to Israeli tallies, 1,200 people were killed and about 250 were taken hostage in the October 7th attack. The Palestinian Health Ministry says the military retaliation in Gaza has since killed over 37,000 people. The reports, which cover the conflict through the end of December, found that both sides committed war crimes, including torture, murder or willful killing, outrageous upon personal dignity, and inhuman or cruel treatment. The report added Israel also committed additional war crimes, including starvation as a method of warfare. The COI statement said some of the war crimes, such as murder, also constituted crime against humanity by Israel, using a term reserved for the most serious international crimes knowingly committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack against civilians. On the report on the October 7th attack, the Commission verified 4 incidents of mass killings in public shelters. It said that suggests militants had standing operational instructions. It also identified a pattern of sexual violence by Palestinian armed groups, but could not independently verify reports of rape. The evidence gathered by such UN-mandated bodies has sometimes formed the basis for war crimes prosecutions and could be drawn on by the International Criminal Court. In May, the ICC Prosecutor's Office has requested arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense chief Yoav Gallant. The COI findings will be discussed by the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva next week.
Leaders of advanced economies are gearing up for the annual G7 meeting in Italy. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is amongst the attendees who will depart for Italy to participate in the 50th G7 summit.
Right, and Prime Minister Modi will attend the summit as an outreach country focusing on significant global issues impacting both the global south and the world at large. This will be Indian Prime Minister's first overseas trip after assuming office for a 3rd consecutive term.
Well, during the 3-day event, scores of bilateral meetings are also expected to happen on the sidelines. Indian Prime Minister will hold bilateral talks with his Italian counterpart, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, marking the 2nd meeting after Meloni's visit to India back in March last year.
U.S. President Joe Biden and Indian Prime Minister Modi are also poised for a potential meeting during the G7 summit, as revealed by America's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. While Modi's presence at the summit awaits formal confirmation from India, Sullivan expressed optimism about the leaders' chance to engage. He also noted that the dynamic scheduling of the summit leaves the specifics of their encounter uncertain.
Well, in a year marked by wars in Europe and the West Asia, U.S. President and his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, are also expected to meet today. According to the White House, the two leaders will sign a bilateral security deal at the summit focused on backing Kiev's fight against Russia's invasion.
With the summit scheduled to commence today, the G7 leaders from the U.S., Japan, Canada, Germany, France, Italy, and Britain are going to attend it. The European Union, which participates in all discussions, is represented by the presidents of both the European Council and the European Commission. The host country also traditionally invites outside guests to join some of the sessions. Italy has thrown open the doors, and this year it will welcome Pope Francis, the King of Jordan, as well as the leaders of Ukraine, India, Brazil, Turkey, UAE, among many others.
In addition, the Secretary General of the United Nations and heads of the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation will be there at the G7 summit.
The United States has announced a series of sanctions aimed at constraining Moscow's war in Ukraine.
Right, Jyotsna. These steps that come ahead of the G7 leaders' talks this week reportedly raise concerns for foreign banks that still deal with Russia.
Now, Wednesday, sanctions by the Treasury Department and State Departments hit over 300 targets. They include entities in Russia and in countries like China, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates.
Well, the entities include the Moscow Exchange and several others. The move is set to complicate billions of dollars in transactions, as well as entities involved in 3 liquefied natural gas projects.
Besides the fresh sanctions, the Treasury Department is broadening its definition of Russia's military-industrial base. Until now, foreign banks could be sanctioned for supporting Russia's defense industry. The latest step expands the reach of so-called secondary sanctions to all Russian individuals and entities that have already been impacted by U.S. sanctions.
Well, this means that foreign financial institutions could be hit for conducting transactions involving any blocked person or Russian banks like VTB or Sberbank, with a list of such exposed targets growing from over 1,000 to about 4,500.
Now, Washington is restricting the supply of its services and certain software support to people in Russia as well. The latest sanctions also impact transnational networks hitting over 90 people and entities in places like China, South Africa, Turkey, and the UAE, said the Treasury.
The United States charges that goods and services from these foreign networks helped Russia to sustain its war and avoid sanctions. Senior U.S. officials say that these efforts will restrict Russia's ability to sustain the war in Ukraine, which have had a major impact.
Now, residents in Havana, in their own words, witnessed a sight like never before when a Russian Navy frigate and a nuclear submarine docked in on the city on Wednesday.
While the United States and Cuba have both denied any threats from this posturing, the move is being regarded as a show of force by Moscow as war in Ukraine rages on in its third year now. Our next report telling you more. Take a look.
A Russian Navy frigate and a nuclear-powered submarine on Wednesday churned into Cuba's Havana harbor, a move the U.S. and Cuba said posed no threat, but was widely seen as a show of Russian force as tensions rise over the Ukraine war.
The visiting Russian warships to Cuba are Vladimir Putin's way of reminding President Biden that Moscow can challenge Washington in its own sphere of influence, too.
William Leo Grand is a professor at American University.
This geopolitical alignment has echoes of the Cold War, but unlike the first Cold War, the Cubans are drawn to Moscow now not by any ideological affinity, but by economic necessity. Cuba is in a desperate economic situation, and Russia is the only country that has been willing to provide significant help, just as it did during the Soviet era.
The stopover coincides with Cuba's worst social and economic crisis in decades, with shortages of everything from food, medicine, and fuel, and growing discontent on the streets. According to Russia's defense ministry, the 4 Russian vessels sailed to the communist-run country on Wednesday after conducting high-precision missile weapons training in the Atlantic Ocean. Cuba's foreign ministry said the fleet carried no nuclear weapons, something echoed by U.S. officials. Curious locals, fishermen, and police looked on.
It impresses me a little because I have never seen something so close, such a large ship of that magnitude.
Last week, Cuba said the visit was standard practice by naval vessels from countries friendly to Havana. The U.S. has been monitoring the Russian vessels as they skirted the nearby Florida coast. On Wednesday, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told reporters that such naval exercises were routine. The Russian ships are expected to remain in Havana until June 17th.
Moving on, Solomon Cats, a Kiev-based charity fund, successfully conducted blood donation drive in Kiev amid intense Russian attacks.
Right, over 200 people donated blood in Kiev city center. Even those who had donated previously say they are motivated by the urgent need for blood on the front lines.
Organizers say they have collected around 90 liters of blood to be sent to the Kiev Regional Blood Center and the Kiev Military Hospital. Our next report telling you more. Well, France is standing at crossroads with the snap election end of this month. It could be the first time that the far-right parties switch from the sidelines to mainstream politics.
But the French President Emmanuel Macron has confirmed that if the power shifts, he will not resign.
No, I want to nip that idea in the bud. The chance of that happening never existed. It's absurd. I believe in the strength of our institutions. Listen, I submitted twice to the suffrage of French people. I hear everything they say about me. We said it 2 years ago. It turns out that I am in elections that still chose me. So it must not be as terrible as some people describe it.
Meanwhile, Macron's unexpected decision to call snap elections has revealed a serious fact about French politics. There has been a decade-old consensus among mainstream parties to join forces to keep the far right out, but that is blowing up ever since European Union's results took a sharp right turn. The Conservatives are looking for an alliance with far right.
I ensured that the Republicans had a voice and continued to have a very strong voice. But today, LR is too weak to oppose the two blocs which are the most dangerous. So we need an alliance, remaining true to ourselves, avoiding the danger of fronts unbowed, who could soon have a majority in the National Assembly. So we need an alliance.
Not everyone is happy with this probable alliance. Many Republican Party lawmakers are walking out of the door. Party veterans say that the leader is isolated and a consensus will need time. This weekend is the deadline to field candidates outside the party structures. The election will take place in 2 rounds on June 30th and July 7th. The next government will take over in July.
Well, tourists from around the world are disappointed as Greek authorities close the famous Acropolis site in Athens due to rising temperatures.
Now, the decision was made as temperatures were expected to reach a scorching 39 degrees Celsius in the Greek capital. Tourists visiting the site expressed their disappointment with the decision as authorities did not communicate the planned closure ahead of time.
No, we were not informed. We got our tickets yesterday at the ticket box for the time slot between 12 and 1 hour today. But we couldn't get the tickets, and there was no explanation that we would be closed.
It might be a little bit of an overreach. I think people have the right to make their own decision, but the world is changing, and there seem to be more rules. I think the governance was probably a little too much.
Yeah, I think there could have been some better communication around it. And that he never received any notifications. One was that it's going to be closing earlier than we anticipated.
The Acropolis that attracted nearly 4 million visitors last year remained closed from midday until 5 p.m. local time due to the high temperatures. The situation is even more extreme in other parts of the Mediterranean country, where temperatures were forecast to hit a sweltering 43 degrees Celsius. This current extreme heat is driven by southerly winds, bringing hot air and dust from North Africa. In addition to the closure of the Acropolis, many primary schools and nurseries across the country were shut for 2 days due to the extreme heat. Greece is one of the most climate-impacted countries in Europe. Last year, rising temperatures fueled deadly wildfires. Erratic rains caused some of the worst flooding on record, damaging crops and livelihoods.
Scientists warn that last winter was the hottest on record, and low rainfall has created conditions for more fires this year. Cooler weather in Greece is expected to arrive late Friday, providing relief from the intense heat wave.
And it's time now for a quick break. But don't go anywhere. On the other side of the world, DNA.
And we'll get you a story, a tragic story, where over 40 Indians have been killed and 50 injured after devastating fire broke out in a building in Kuwait.
Also on the other side, fresh encounter breaks out in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir's Doda district, leaving a soldier injured. This is the second encounter in Doda and the fourth in Jammu and Kashmir in the last 4 days. We'll get you the full story on the other side. This and don't go anywhere. World DNA will be right back.
Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
It's a double whammy for Africa's populous nation. Unions shut down country's power grid as cost of living crisis persists, making big conglomerates to also close shop in Nigeria. Respiratory diseases plague Kenya as more people burn wood to save money. And Somaliland's first girls basketball team secures right to play and now advocates for independence. Watch World of Africa at these times on WION. World is one.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Economic turmoil and global unrest have cast a shadow over President Joe Biden's approval ratings.
The rockets are continuing to be fired by Hamas in Gaza, although at a slower rate than previously.
So, right now, we are with the volunteers from the Aleppo municipality. They are still trying to go to the rescue for the people they can find out.
India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injured have been moved. 61 people are confirmed dead and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
For WION, World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back to World DNA. I'm Jyotsna Kumar and my colleague Rahisha Segu. We have a lot lined up, but first let's take a look at the headlines.
USA's President Biden and Prime Minister Modi are likely to meet on the sidelines of the G7 summit as India's Prime Minister travels to Italy on his first overseas trip after assuming office for a third consecutive term.
India's Minister of State for External Affairs leaves for Kuwait on directions of Prime Minister Modi after at least 40 Indian workers die in a building fire.
Jammu and Kashmir police released sketches of 4 terrorists involved in 2 attacks in Doda, announced reward for information leading to their arrest.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Hamas has proposed numerous changes, some unworkable, to the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal. Hamas denies proposing new ideas.
A UN investigation accuses Israel of committing crimes against humanity during the Gaza war, including that of extermination. Probe also accuses Hamas of war crimes. Israel rejects the findings of the probe. Four Russian naval
vessels, including a nuclear-powered submarine and a frigate, arrive in Cuba in a show of strength amid tensions with the West over the war in Ukraine.
A Russian ballistic missile strike on Ukraine's southern city of Kyiv kills 9 and injures 29, including 5 children. The deadliest attack in weeks damaged an administrative building and an apartment block.
One of the greatest basketball players of all time, Jerry West, has passed away at the age of 86. His silhouette inspired the iconic NBA logo.
Well, over 40 Indians were killed and more than 50 injured after a devastating fire broke out at dawn in a building housing around 195 migrant workers in southern Kuwait's Mangaf area.
Right, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called the incident saddening and has said that the Indian embassy in Kuwait is closely monitoring the situation.
He has also announced relief of $2,400 to the families of killed Indian nationals from the Prime Minister Relief Fund and instructed the government to extend all possible assistance to the people. Prime Minister Modi also held a high-level meeting and has directed Minister of State for External Affairs KV Singh to leave for Kuwait immediately.
Taking to social media, X Singh wrote, and I'm quoting here, as directed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we are immediately departing for Kuwait to provide assistance to those injured in the fire tragedy and to coordinate with local authorities for early repatriation of mortal remains of those who have died in this unfortunate incident.
The situation is that the victims are mostly burn victims, and some of the bodies have been charred beyond recognition. So a DNA test is underway to identify the victims, and Air Force plane is on the ready, and as soon as the bodies are identified, their kin will be informed, and our Air Force plane will bring the bodies back.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke to his Kuwaiti counterpart and said that he was assured that the incident would be fully probed and that the responsibility would be fixed. The Kuwaiti Foreign Minister further said that they will review the situation closely once India's minister reaches Kuwait.
India's Ministry of External Affairs also released a statement confirming that the injured are receiving medical care in 5 governmental hospitals and that they are in stable condition. The embassy is currently working with Kuwaiti authorities and the involved company to obtain comprehensive details.
According to officials, the majority of those deceased were Indian nationals from Kerala and North Indian states. The Tamil Nadu government has announced that it is probing whether Tamils were among those killed in the tragic fire incident. As per local media in Kuwait, the deadly fire engulfing the apartment building in Al Mangaf area could have been due to a gas leak. As per the Kuwait Times, reports indicated that it could have been a gas leak from the building's ground floor, though no official confirmation or reason has been given as of yet by the authorities, and the cause of the fire is also unknown.
Meanwhile, Kuwait's Minister of Public Works and Minister of Municipality have been suspended after the tragic incident. Now, for more on this, we have our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhan Sibal, joining us live on the phone line. Siddhan, if you can hear me. Now, Minister of State of External Affairs, KV Singh, has left for Kuwait. Meanwhile, S. Jaishankar is also speaking with Kuwaiti counterpart regarding the fire tragedy. What else is the Indian government and the Kuwaiti government doing at the moment? And how do you see that the things are moving forward after India's Minister, KV Singh, reaches Kuwait today?
Well, since the incident happened yesterday, we know several measures have been taken place. So first, from the Indian side, we know that the Indian Prime Minister held a meeting, an important meeting yesterday evening, where the Indian External Affairs Minister, MOS KV Singh, and NSA were present along with Foreign Secretary and other officials, in which a decision was taken that 2 lakh rupees will be given to the next of kin of those who have died. Now, we also know, as you pointed out, that MOS is leaving for Kuwait. The External Affairs Minister has spoken to his Kuwaiti counterpart. But essentially, a large number of Indians are from the state of Kerala. And of course, we know that the Chief Minister of Kerala has also written to the External Affairs Minister about the situation and the support and assistance required. On the ground, the Indian mission, the Indian Embassy, is working almost non-stop. The Indian ambassador was seen in the hospital where the injured are being taken care of. And we know about Kuwait. It has a substantial, a very large number of Indians. These Indians are playing an important role. Most of them are in the blue-collar worker job, and they are playing an important role in terms of infrastructure development. But a lot of them are doctors, nurses, and of course supporting the growth of Kuwait. The Kuwaiti government, on its part has ordered an investigation. The leadership there has also sent condolences. And the Kuwaiti Interior Minister was also seen at the location and has ordered the arrest of the person who is responsible for the incident. So it is still a developing story. Today, we will see more development happening in terms of the governments of Kuwait and India working together to provide support to those who are injured and also, of course, provide relief to them.
Right, Siddhant, you speak of how the Indian are in demand in Kuwait. Talk to us about why are Indians in demand in Kuwait and why does it constitute a significant labor force for Kuwait? If I could just spill some numbers, according to data, Indians constitute 21% of Kuwait's total population and 30% of its total workforce.
Well, that's a larger West Asian situation. You point to any country from UAE to Qatar to Kuwait to Oman. Indians play an important role in West Asia. They constituted an important population there, providing support. And if you look at the Indian diaspora, I can divide the Indian diaspora into two major components. First is the diaspora, which is wealthy in many senses in UK, US, in the West, in Australia. And diaspora in West Asia, the blue-collar workers. Now, for that, India has in the past signed a number of pacts to make sure that they do not face problems. In fact, one thing I can point out, a fact that many of our viewers might not know, is the largest number of consulars present in Indian embassies anywhere in the world are in West Asia, in countries like UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, because of the needs of these people in terms of any support. They also face a lot of challenges of their own. Their governments, of course, have been appreciative of the role Indians are playing in the country in terms of development. But there have been issues in the past as well. For example, kafala system. This was a system that was prevalent long time in West Asia. According to that if any person, for example, an Indian goes to West Asia, his passport was to be kept by the employer, and he used to never give the passport, essentially making them a slave. And this basically means that they cannot move around, they cannot switch jobs, and they cannot even leave the country. This was strongly taken up by the Modi government in last 10 years, and this has now reduced. This tradition has now been kept down. But essentially, there are other issues as well, and India has been time again raising this issue.
Right. Thank you so much, Siddhant, for that. And we will be tracking more developments as we go forward. Now, we're also being joined by our correspondent, Siddhant MP, on the phone line. Now, Siddhant, 40 Indians have lost their lives, and most of them are probably are from Kerala and North India. And we know that Tamil Nadu has launched a probe. Do we have any such news from any North Indian states that, as of now? And, we see that the Tamils, do we know any numbers that how many of them could have been from that region?
So what we know is that Tamil Nadu, of course, launched an inquiry into this entire incident that's happened, an unfortunate incident that unfolded in Mangaf yesterday. So the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister has just now shared a social media post, and he has mentioned that the non-resident Tamils Welfare Department, they are actually in touch with the authorities in Kuwait. They're in touch with the Indian embassy there. They're in touch with the diasporic populations there. And there are also, of course, a lot of associations for Tamils who are living abroad. So they're in touch with these associations there to understand what is the situation like, how many Tamils are affected directly by this, either injured or casualties. And we also have to remember in a lot of cases, the bodies are charred beyond recognition. So it would take some time to actually ascertain the identities, which is why there is a delay in getting the details. But of course, as day breaks in Kuwait, we'll get to know Kuwait is at least 2.5 hours behind Indian time. So day has still not broken in Kuwait. But, by the time, it's afternoon or evening in India, more details are expected to emerge from Kuwait. But now it's still early hours in Kuwait. And that's why, much of the information that we're giving is from yesterday's developments. Because today, as such, what we can expect is we can expect an update on the numbers, because Kerala yesterday it was ascertained that at least 10 people who are deceased, that is of the 40 plus people deceased, at least 10 of them are from Kerala. And their details has also been revealed that some of them are in their even early 20s and some of them are in their 50s. So even their age group and the district that they belong to in Kerala, that has been ascertained in some cases. But in the other case, especially from Tamil Nadu, there is no clarity yet. and also to talk about the attractiveness of Kuwait as a destination for those in India, is especially the fact that Kuwait has the strongest currency in the world. So just to give our viewers some perspective, one Kuwaiti dinar is equal to almost $3.5 US. So US dollar itself is considered a very, very strong and stable currency. Then one Kuwaiti dinar is equal to $3.5, which is what makes it an extremely attractive destination for Indians to go there and work, especially be it those from lower strata, be it the labor class, or be it also those who are in white-collar professions and professional domains. This makes Kuwait a very attractive destination for work, because the world's strongest currency is the Kuwaiti dinar. To give you some perspective, for the last 10 years, the Kuwaiti dinar has been well over 200 Indian rupees, and then one Kuwaiti dinar is more than 200 Indian rupees, and right now one Kuwaiti dinar is almost 272 Indian rupees. So this gives a perspective on why there is such a large Indian population there, because this makes it such an attractive destination for earning and being able to send that money back to India. But of course, that is just one aspect on the background.
Right, Siddharth. Thank you so much for joining us on the show with your insights. Moving on, a fresh encounter broke out in Jammu and Kashmir's Doda district on Wednesday, leaving a soldier injured.
Now, this is the second encounter in Doda and a fourth in Jammu Kashmir in the last 4 days.
Well, 12 people have been killed in the Riyasi, Kathua and Doda terror attacks so far. Police have blamed Pakistan for the recent spurt in violence. The attacks come just days after the Indian elections witnessed a large turnout.
Meanwhile, the Jammu and Kashmir police released sketches of 4 terrorists involved in the 2 terror incidents in Doda. A reward of 20 lakh rupees has been announced for information leading to their arrest. Also, the police has released a sketch of one of the terrorists involved in the Raisi terror attack.
A day earlier, 2 suspected Pakistani terrorists were killed by security forces in Kathua.
The sudden rise in violence comes after the region's Director General of Police, R.R. Swain, said that the number of local militants were dropping, although 70 to 80 foreign militants continue to be active. Now we turn our focus to the budget under Modi 3.0. The questions doing the rounds include, can the government balance financial assistance to states which have supported forming the coalition and maintaining fiscal discipline?
Right, or is the appointment of Nirmala Sitharaman a signal of policy continuity? Well, Prime Minister Modi's new cabinet has seen the return of several old faces from his earlier administration. Market watchers, they interpret Modi's decision to reappoint Nirmala Sitharaman as a clear indication of no policy change. However, Sitharaman faces a barrage of challenges.
One key challenge will be to balance fiscal demands in coalition government after the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party failed to win a majority in the elections. For the coalition government to stay in power, Modi needs the support of regional parties. The power brokers of these parties have demanded financial assistance for their states. However, analysts expect the government to maintain the fiscal deficit target set in February's interim budget.
Well, Shantanu Sen-Gupta, an economist at Goldman Sachs Group, said, and I'm quoting him here, we expect the new government to stick to the fiscal consolidation path with a continued thrust on infrastructure creation through more rail network amidst a slight tilt towards more rural spending, unquote.
Voters have told the Prime Minister and his once dominant party what they could care about. Voters are more concerned about inflation, unemployment and inequality. Modi claims a connection to the common Indian as the son of tea seller.
Well, millions have just told him what they want, jobs and growth. They have voted against the growth narrative, which does not give an average Indian any kind of a share. They have said an 8% plus growth rate is just a tagline, and they need clear prospects for a better future for their families and nation.
Taxation changes for the middle class in the budget is buzzing as a priority. So the numbers in the budget will be scrutinized more closely for answers to those questions. The narrative the government builds around the various schemes will be questioned more widely. Sitharaman will also deal with closer scrutiny of the budget members in the parliament and the press, which will be new.
Let's now take a look at all the news from the world of technology. According to a survey by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, more than 60% of the drivers in the US support anti-speeding technology in vehicles. Of the total drivers surveyed, more than 80% said that they would like a feature that would display the vehicle's speed.
Around 70% of the drivers said they want an unobtrusive tone to sound when the speed limit changes. Meanwhile, around half of the drivers said they will happily adopt a technology that would make the vehicle's accelerator pedal harder to press or one that would automatically restrict speed.
The European Union is soon going to apply additional 38% tariff on imported Chinese electric vehicles. EU currently charges 10% tax on all imported EVs. The move is aimed at protecting local European manufacturers, prevent unfair competition and market distortion. The new tariffs will come into effect from July. That's not all. The European Commission has also launched several probes into whether Chinese clean tech producers are dumping goods on EU markets and whether Chinese-owned companies unfairly benefit from subsidies while operating inside the EU.
Tech giants Google and Apple have been accused by South Korea of illegally collecting location data without user consent. Both Apple and Google were among the 188 firms fined by the South Korean government for allegedly violating a law on location data collection. While Google's South Korean unit has been slapped with a $2,180 fine, Apple has to pay around $154,000 to the South Korean government. Now for some sports news. 2007 champions India have become the third team to qualify for the Super 8 stage of the T20 World Cup.
Suryakumar Yadav is fighting half-century and his unbeaten 67-run stand with Shivam Dube helped India defeat co-host USA by 7 wickets in New York.
Put into bat first at Nassau County Stadium, USA made a poor